People said, can we, with these same hands, give God a praise offering this morning for not only his saving grace, but his sending grace? We will continue to pray for you, Dr. Hawley. It's a joy to be a part of the Trinity family with you. Well, good morning, Trinity family. A special welcome to those of you who are visiting with us in person, perhaps for the first time, maybe online for the first time. We are glad that you are here as we are continuing, wrapping up actually our series entitled When Life Gets Tough. As I have been saying throughout this series, nobody is immune from going through seasons in life that are tough. Nobody is immune. And that includes believers. That includes even fully devoted followers of Jesus. Just this past week, Amanda and I connected with many in our church who are going through tough seasons in life. Some because of their job, others due to a cancer diagnosis or an emergency surgery, some who are in the middle of a tough marriage, several who are facing tough parenting assignments, others who are struggling with the recent loss of a loved one, and many, especially our seniors and our students, who are feeling lonely and trapped at home because of COVID. Right? And those are just the people we connected with this past week. My guess is that there are many, many others in the room or watching online who are also going through a tough season in life right now. And so this morning, as we wrap up this series, I want us to look at and learn from the life of Jeremiah. Jeremiah, a person in the Bible whose entire life really was one long series of tough assignments. Jeremiah is primarily known as a prophet, but he actually began his vocational career as a priest. The book of Jeremiah begins with these words. Verse 1 of chapter 1, the words of Jeremiah, son of Hilkiah, one of the priests at Anathoth in the territory of Benjamin. Jeremiah was a priest, which was a pretty good job in the 7th century BC. It put food on the table. Priests were fairly appreciated by the people of Israel. After all, the priests in the Old Testament were the ones who offered sacrifices for the people's sins so that they could be forgiven. And so priests were a fairly liked lot of people. They didn't ruffle too many feathers since it was their job to forgive the sins through the sacrifices, not to call out the people's sins. Right? That was the job of the prophet. The prophet's job was to call out people's sins, which is why the prophets weren't invited over to dinner very often. Well, you can probably guess the vocational role that God was about to call Jeremiah to, right? Look at verse 4. The word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. God says to Jeremiah, no longer are you to be a priest. I am now appointing you to be a prophet. And as you can imagine, Jeremiah was not too happy about this career change. Right? He liked his job as a priest. He liked his corner office at the temple. Right? He was pretty good at offering the sacrifices. He knew how that worked. And the people that he served appreciated him. Being a priest was a stable job, had good benefits, a nice 401k plan. Right? Becoming a prophet would mean giving all of that up and having to preach. And Jeremiah did not score real high marks in his public speaking class, which I can relate to. As some of you know, I dropped out of my speech class in college because I was afraid of giving a 5-minute speech in front of 20 of my peers. I didn't like speaking in public. Well, evidently, Jeremiah didn't like speaking in public either. Listen to verse 6. He says, in response to this call, alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I do not know how to speak. I am too young. Notice he throws an excuse out there. Of course, God is not a big fan of us making excuses based on our insecurities, right? Listen to verse 7. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am too young. You must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth. Now, at this point, if I'm putting myself in Jeremiah's shoes, I'm probably thinking, okay, maybe this won't be too bad. I don't have to be afraid. God is going to be with me. God is going to put his words in my mouth. Doesn't sound so bad, right? But then the words that God starts putting in Jeremiah's mouth are not exactly the soft, sweet words that you find in Hallmark cards that make people feel all warm and fuzzy inside. No, God has a message about judgment for Jeremiah to deliver to his people. Listen to verse 13. The word of the Lord came to me again. What do you see? I see a pot that is boiling, I answered. It's tilting toward us from the north. The Lord said to me, from the north, disaster will be poured out on all who live in the land. I am about to summon all the peoples of the northern kingdoms, declares the Lord. Their kings will come and set up their thrones in the entrance of the gates of Jerusalem. They will come against all her surrounding walls and against all the towns of Judah. I will pronounce my judgments on my people because of their wickedness in forsaking me, in burning incense to other gods, and in worshiping what their hands have made. God gives Jeremiah a message about judgment to deliver. That's a tough assignment. That's a tough assignment. The fact is, most of the words that God puts in Jeremiah's mouth had to do with warnings about impending judgment. Not only here in chapter 1, but throughout the entire book of Jeremiah, the message that God calls Jeremiah to deliver again and again and again is this: repent. Repent. Turn from evil. Stop ignoring me. Stop worshiping those things that you think will provide you security. Stop putting your hope in those things that you think will provide you a sense of refuge in this world. Stop ignoring me. Stop rejecting me. Otherwise, I'm going to punish you. I'm going to send you into exile. That's the message that God called Jeremiah to deliver again and again and again. And as you can imagine, that was a hard message to deliver. But as you read through the book of Jeremiah, you find Jeremiah taking on that assignment. And at least at the beginning, perhaps believing that everything was going to work out. After all, it was God he was working for, and God said he'd be with him. God was going to be on his side. And so Jeremiah, I'm sure, believed that this story was going to have a happily ever after ending. But here's what actually happens as Jeremiah continues to preach these messages about judgment. Nobody listens to him. Nobody listens to him. His preaching just makes people really, really mad, really, really angry. The more he preaches, the angrier they get. In fact, by Jeremiah chapter 11, there's a group of people from this place called Anathoth who start plotting to kill Jeremiah. Now, fortunately, their plot fails because the Lord revealed their plot to Jeremiah. Listen to verse 18 of chapter 11. It says this: because the Lord revealed their plot to me, I knew it, for at that time he showed me what they were doing. Verse 21, therefore, this is what the Lord says about the people of Anathoth who are threatening to kill you, saying, do not prophesy in the name of the Lord, or you will die by our hands. Therefore, this is what the Lord Almighty says: I will punish them. Their young men will die by the sword, their sons and daughters by famine. Not even a remnant will be left to them, because I will bring disaster on the people of Anathoth in the year of their punishment. Loosely translated, God basically here is telling Jeremiah, don't be afraid of these punks who are threatening to kill you. Don't lose focus. You just keep preaching my word, and I will deal with them. Stay focused on the assignment I've given you. It's a tough assignment, but stay focused on this assignment I'm giving you. I'll deal with them. And so Jeremiah does keep on preaching, even though nobody responds to his preaching. In fact, the more Jeremiah preaches, the angrier people get. Jeremiah chapter 20, verses 1 and 2 reads this way: when the priest Pashur, son of Immer, the official in charge of the temple of the Lord, heard Jeremiah prophesying these things, he had Jeremiah the prophet beaten and put in the stocks at the upper gate of Benjamin at the Lord's temple. He preaches, he gets beaten up and thrown into prison. I doubt getting beaten up and thrown into prison is what Jeremiah had in mind when he heard God tell him back in chapter 1, don't be afraid, Jeremiah. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to help you. In fact, Jeremiah feels like God has deceived him. He really does. He feels like God has deceived him. Look at verse 7 of chapter 20. It says, you deceived me. This is Jeremiah speaking. You deceived me, Lord, and I was deceived. You overpowered me and prevailed. Interestingly, this word deceived in some translations gets translated persuaded. Deceived, persuaded, these are both really weak translations. This is the same word in Hebrew as the word that's translated seduced in Exodus 22, where the law is spelling out the consequences for a man who seduces sexually a young girl. In other words, Jeremiah here is saying, God, you seduced me into this assignment. You sweet-talked me into following you. Believing, like, leading me to believe that this was all going to work out. How could you do that, God? How could you seduce me? How could you sweet-talk me into doing this thing where I believed that it was going to work out one way, and then you kind of pulled a bait and switch on me? My guess is that some of you in this room, maybe watching online, you can relate to what Jeremiah is saying here, what Jeremiah is feeling here. Maybe you've never said it out loud, because sometimes we don't say this kind of stuff out loud. But some of you feel like God has pulled a bait and switch on you. You thought that life with God would go in a certain way, but it hasn't. And now you're confused. Now perhaps you're even frustrated with God. Well, that's where Jeremiah is. He doesn't understand why his life is so tough when he's been obedient to God. I mean, Jeremiah has tried to be and do and say everything God has called him to be and do and say. And yet here he is, preaching the word, and as a result of that, getting beaten and thrown into jail. The rest of verse 7, I'm ridiculed all day long. Everyone mocks me. Whenever I speak, I cry out, proclaiming violence and destruction. So the word of the Lord has brought me insult and reproach all day long. In other words, Jeremiah here is saying, all I've ever gotten from preaching God's word is persecution and imprisonment. Nevertheless, Jeremiah continues, I'm compelled to keep preaching your word. I'm compelled to keep preaching your word. Verse 9, he says this, but if I say I will not mention his word or speak anymore in his name, his word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. He says, God's word is in me like a fire shut up in my bones. In other words, Jeremiah is saying, I've just got to let it out. I've just got to let it out, Jeremiah says, because the truth is, Jeremiah knows that although it feels at times like God tricked him into this assignment, this is what he's called to do. This is what he's called to do. And upon reflection, Jeremiah knows that God has been faithful to help him do this assignment. I can relate to that. I'm not wired to be a preacher. But God's word is shut up in my bones. I am compelled to proclaim who he is and what he's done. There's a sense in which that's what Jeremiah here is saying. Like, you tricked me. You sweet-talked me. You seduced me into this deal. Nevertheless, I know you've been with me. I know you've helped me. I know you've been faithful to empower me to take on this assignment. The beginning of verse 11 says, but the Lord is with me like a mighty warrior. Jeremiah even breaks into praise when he thinks about how God has helped him. Look at verse 13 of the same chapter. Sing to the Lord, give praise to the Lord. He rescues the life of the needy from the hands of the wicked. See, even though Jeremiah's life has been difficult, tough, he's also experienced God's goodness, God's faithfulness. Right? Jeremiah has also experienced God's rescue, which is what leads him here to give God praise. Sing praise to God, Jeremiah says. And yet in the very next verse, Jeremiah slips back into this melancholy victim spirit soliloquy about how his life is so hard that it would have been better for him if he had never been born. Verse 14 says, "Cursed be the day I was born. May the day my mother bore me not be blessed." Verse 15, "Cursed be the man who brought my father the news, who made him very glad, saying, 'A child is born to you, a son.'" Verse 18, "Why did I ever come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow and to end my days in shame?" Some scholars believe that Jeremiah perhaps suffered from bipolar disorder because of the pendulum swings between discouragement and praising God. To which I would say, maybe, I don't know. Or maybe, though, this is just what it looks like when believers are in the midst of a tough season in life and they're trying to not give up. They're trying to remain faithful to who God is and to what God has called them to. Maybe that's what it looks like. These pendulum swings between praising God for his faithfulness and this discouragement and this confusion and this frustration. Some of you can very much relate to these pendulum swings that you see here in the life of Jeremiah. Well, the reason behind so much of Jeremiah's discouragement is the same reason so many of us get discouraged in life. It's because in addition to being faithful, Jeremiah also wanted to be successful. He also wanted to be successful. He wanted his life and his job to make a visible difference. And my guess is you can very much relate to that, right? You want your life to make a difference that you can see. You want your life to count for something that you can see. Jeremiah, too, wanted his life to count for something that he could see. He wanted to be faithful and successful. But as Mother Teresa said, God doesn't call you to be successful. He only calls you to be faithful. God doesn't call us to be successful. He only calls us to be faithful. Well, eventually, Jeremiah's commitment to be faithful does win out over his desire for success. And so he perseveres for years in this hard job of delivering hard words to a people with hard hearts. Even though their response to his preaching would never be what he hoped it would be. The people's hearts actually got harder toward God and toward Jeremiah over the next few years. In fact, as Jeremiah continued to warn them that God was raising up a foreign army to take them into captivity if they didn't repent, the people didn't like that unpatriotic message. And so in Jeremiah chapter 37, the people and the politicians, for that matter, began to spread lies about Jeremiah, that he was a political traitor who had deserted to the Babylonians. Right? They were the rival empire, the Babylonians, to which Jeremiah says this in response to that claim. "That's not true," Jeremiah said. "I'm not deserting to the Babylonians." But Ahijah would not listen to him. Instead, he arrested Jeremiah and brought him to the officials. They were angry with Jeremiah and had him beaten and imprisoned in the house of Jonathan the secretary, which they had made into a prison. Verse 16, Jeremiah was put into a vaulted cell in a dungeon where he remained a long time. This is the pattern of Jeremiah's life. He preaches, and then he gets thrown into prison. Preach, prison. Preach, prison. This is the pattern. In the very next chapter, Jeremiah preaches another very unpopular message, and the king of Judah authorizes his officials to do whatever they want with Jeremiah. He's just so sick of Jeremiah, just have at it. Do whatever you want to him. And so they throw Jeremiah into a cistern full of mud, and they leave him there to starve to death. This is Jeremiah 38. They throw him into a cistern of mud, and they leave him there to starve to death. Well, providentially, someone in the royal palace has pity on Jeremiah, pulls him out, which is the point where, if I were Jeremiah, folks, I would be tempted to say, I think I'm going to take a break from preaching all these messages on judgment. I'm just going to do a nice long sermon series on love. Right? But Jeremiah doesn't do that. Jeremiah doesn't do that because he's given up the need for success. He's given up the need for people liking him. It's no longer the highest priority for Jeremiah. He's just surrendered that. Like we pray, he's just got open hands before the Lord. Whatever you have for me, I just want to be faithful. I don't need to be successful. Now, he still gets disappointed that his ministry has not led to repentance, much less revival, which is what the prophets were always praying for, hoping for. But he's committed now to his tough assignment. In fact, for the rest of his life, Jeremiah faithfully preaches God's word, even though it continues to fall on deaf ears. The people never do change. The people never do repent. They never do turn back to God. They don't change their ways, and eventually the Babylonians do come into Jerusalem, do overtake their city, do take them into captivity, including Jeremiah. Jeremiah, even though he was the one preaching this message of warning, Jeremiah gets brought into captivity with the rest of God's people. All of this happens, just like Jeremiah warned. And then one day, while he's in captivity, Jeremiah writes the book of Lamentations, which is, for the most part, a really depressing little letter describing how nobody listened to God's word, which is why everybody, including Jeremiah, is now experiencing God's judgment. Here are just a few verses from that peppy little letter that you've never seen on a Hallmark card, at least these particular verses. Lamentations 1, verse 1, I am the man, this is Jeremiah writing, I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of the Lord's wrath. He's driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again all day long. He's made my skin and my flesh grow old and has broken my bones. Most of the book of Lamentations sounds a lot like that. Lamentations is Jeremiah's commentary on what happened to the people of Israel and to him. And it's, again, like I said, fairly depressing. But then right in the middle of this book, right in the middle of this letter, Jeremiah reflects on how God is still faithful. How God is still faithful. That even though judgment came, because God is just and God will judge sin, that God is also loving, that God is also compassionate, that God is also merciful, and that he'll find a way to save us even in the midst of our sins. Listen to this, and as you listen to these verses, I want you to remember that Jeremiah did not pen these words up on some spiritual mountaintop. No, he wrote them while he was in captivity, while he was in chains, while he was in exile. Take a look. This is verses 21 and following. Yet this I call to mind. Yet being in contrast to what he's been writing for the last pages of Lamentations. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness. Again, right in the middle of this letter that's all about God's judgment against sin, there is this window into God's mercy toward sinners. Through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, Jeremiah could see a day that was coming when God would both judge our sin and show us mercy. Which is why these verses in the middle of Lamentations really are a foreshadow of the cross. They're a preview of the gospel. Right? They foreshadow the cross, right? The cross is where God displayed both his justice and his mercy as he both judged our sin through Christ's death and showed us his mercy by dying in our place. So that as Romans 3:26 says, God is both just and the one who justifies those who have faith in Jesus. He's both. He's just. He judges sin. And he's justifier, merciful to those who would turn to him in faith. Talk about God being faithful to carry out both his justice against sin and his mercy towards sinners. He fulfills both at the cross, which is why we sing, "Great is thy faithfulness." Right? One of the verses proclaims pardon for sin and a peace that endureth. Right? Because he is both just and justifier. He is both just in his justice against sin and merciful towards sinners. By the way, the inspiration for that hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness," it's Lamentations 3:21-23. A letter that was penned in chains. A letter that was penned in captivity. See, even in chains, friends, even after decades of pain and disappointment, Jeremiah could declare, "Great is thy faithfulness," because he knew the character of God. That God would be faithful to both his justice and his mercy. That God would be both just to judge our sin and merciful to save all those who turn to him in faith through the cross. Through the cross. See, friends, the cross is exhibit A. Exhibit A of God's faithfulness. And it's what we need to train ourselves to look at when we're going through tough seasons in life. I know that's where some of you are right now. And I would just encourage you this morning, remember that God is faithful. Remember that God is faithful. Not only is your eternal destiny secure if you've put your trust in Christ, but he's also with you right now too. Just like he helped Jeremiah to endure, just like he helped Jeremiah to persevere, he'll help you to endure. He'll help you to persevere by giving you new mercies every morning. That's what Lamentations 3 promises. Right in the middle of this letter that's all about God's judgment against sin, there's this wonderful declaration of God's faithfulness that includes new mercies every morning. God's sufficiency to carry you through whatever you're going through. Folks, if there's one thing that I've learned in my 25 years or so as a pastor, it's that God's grace is sufficient. That his power really is made perfect in our weakness. His power really is made perfect in those areas in life where we feel wholly inadequate to do what he's called us to do. Where we feel wholly inadequate and insecure to do whatever it is that he's called us to do. In fact, it's when we're not sure how we're going to do what he's called us to do that God then so often shows himself to us to be strong and sufficient. Again, my entire pastoral ministry has been an object lesson for me in learning that even though I'm not wired to be a pastor or a preacher, that God is able to help me do whatever he calls me to do. Some of you need to see your tough assignment as an opportunity for God to reveal to you that his power is made perfect in weakness. As an opportunity for God to show you his strength and his sufficiency. Maybe he wants to show you that in your job or in your marriage or in some relational challenge. Maybe he wants to show you that in your parenting or in your care for a very tough to love family member. Maybe he wants to show you that in your role as a student or in your financial situation. For some of you, maybe he wants to show you his strength and sufficiency in a tough assignment that he's going to call you to in the future that you don't even know about. God still does that, you know. God still does that. He did it with Jeremiah, and my guess is that he wants to do that with some of you as well. Don't think about your age and think, I know I'm going to flirt with a line here. Don't think about your age and think, well, those years are behind me. How do you know that? Moses was 80 when God called him to a tough assignment. Maybe God's going to call some of you to a tough assignment. He did it with Jeremiah. Maybe he wants to do that with some of you too. And here's what I would say on that point. Look around, folks, and tell me that God isn't looking for some people who are willing to say yes to tough assignments. All right, think about how we're commissioning Dr. Holly to Nepal. She's not going to parade around as though that's a tough assignment. I know, Holly. That's a tough assignment. Right? Look around, folks. Slave trafficking, abortion, racism, systemic poverty. These are not things that are just going to go away. Someone or someones are going to have to say, Lord, I'm available for that tough assignment. I'll spend my life, the remaining days of my life, fighting that evil, even if it's an uphill battle. Even if it doesn't get marked by what the world would deem success. Right? Thousands of foster kids aren't going to get taken care of. The gospel is not going to just find its way to 6,000 people groups that have never yet heard the name of Jesus. That's not going to just happen. No, someone's going to have to say, Jesus, because you died for me, I want to live for you. Because you died for me, I want to live for you. I'm available for a tough assignment, Lord, if you have one for me. Let me give you one final snapshot from Jeremiah's life before we wrap up. There's a point in the middle of Jeremiah's life where God calls him to do something that required real courage, as if everything else that he had to do didn't require some courage. This one requires some real courage. Not only did God call Jeremiah to preach a message of warning to the people about what would happen if they didn't repent, but God also called Jeremiah to illustrate this warning with an object lesson that would make the people really, really mad. The story, if you want to check it out later, is found in Jeremiah 19, where God calls Jeremiah to go buy a pot from a potter. And then to smash this pot in front of the people, basically telling them that if they continued to reject God, if they continued to go their own way, that God was going to do to them what Jeremiah was going to do to this pot. Now, at this point, if I'm Jeremiah, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking to myself, I don't like this assignment, because if I smash this pot and I tell these people that God is going to smash them if they don't turn back to him, then these people are going to probably smash me. Right? I mean, that's most certainly what Jeremiah was thinking. Jeremiah knows that if he preaches this message, he smashes this pot, that he is going to pay dearly for it, maybe with his life, but certainly with people being mad at him. Of course, the truth is we all have assignments at some point in life where God asks us to do something or say something that will make people mad at us, right? Which is why all of us have to come to this place in life, in our jobs, in our relationships, where we say, God, I want to do what you want me to do, no matter the fallout. I want to do what you call me to do, no matter how tough things get, no matter how many people hate me. Because God, you're worth it. God, you're worth it. Well, that's the place where Jeremiah was being taken by God. God wanted to get Jeremiah to that place where he was willing to obey no matter what, no matter the fallout. That he would know at an intimate level God's faithfulness, that God was worth it, no matter how people responded or didn't respond. And so at the end of the day, Jeremiah, he takes on that tough assignment. He preaches that unpopular message, and then he smashes that clay pot at the end of his sermon. And then things play out just exactly like Jeremiah thought they would. Right, he smashes that clay pot, and then in the very next verse, the people smash him. And they throw him in the stocks. Right, this scene of a smashed pot and a smashed Jeremiah is a snapshot of Jeremiah's tough life. But it's also this beautiful picture, friends, of someone who was sold out to God. absolutely sold out to God. It's this illustration of someone who is willing to do whatever God wanted him to do, no matter the fallout, no matter how people responded or didn't respond. And oh, the glory of Jeremiah's life, right? The glory that Jeremiah's life brought to God. The legacy of Jeremiah's life, right? As generations, right? Literally millions upon millions of believers have been inspired by the story of Jeremiah faithfully serving God, even when it's hard, even when it's tough. Some of you don't know this, you're going to learn this about me. Jeremiah was my patron saint when I was going through that 18-month dark night of the soul in college. Right? Jeremiah showed me what it looked like to keep trusting God, even though my life wasn't playing out like I thought it would. Jeremiah showed me how to trust God, even as I battled doubts and depression. And what happened for me is what happened for Jeremiah. As I learned to trust God amidst my doubts, amidst my depression, I came to experience God's faithfulness. That his mercies really are new every morning. That his grace really is sufficient to sustain me through a significant season in life that was tough. Now, there were still days when I woke up on the verge of despair. I don't want to have redaction, criticism, history here, but over time, I started to realize that God was shaping me, that God was showing me his power is made perfect in my weakness. Which is one of the glorious things that God is doing through our tough seasons in life, friends. See, God doesn't just want to take us to heaven when we die. Sure, that's part of it, and it's glorious. But God's end game, according to Romans 8:29, is to transform us, to conform us into the image of Jesus. And that transformational process happens, at least it begins now. Right? He wants to begin that transformational process in us now. This is why James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Right? And perseverance must finish its work so that you're mature, so that you're not lacking anything. Again, don't misunderstand me. I know I said this last week. I'm not saying that God is the author of every hard thing in your life, but I am saying he's over every hard thing in your life. And he wants to use every hard thing in your life to transform you. To transform you. As you came in this morning, you were handed a piece of smashed clay pot and a pen. What I invite you to do now is to write one of two things on that piece of clay pot. Number one, if you're in the midst of a tough assignment, I want to encourage you to write down on that piece of clay in a word or a phrase the name of that tough assignment or that situation in life where you need God's help to persevere, where you need God's help to endure. Maybe it's a relational assignment. Maybe it's a vocational assignment. Maybe it's a financial situation. Maybe it's related to a family challenge, a ministry assignment, a medical diagnosis. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you to write it down on that piece of clay in your hand and then take it home and put it somewhere as a reminder to persevere through this tough assignment and to remember as you're persevering God's faithfulness. That he wants to show you his strength and his sufficiency in the midst of that tough assignment that you're going through. For some of you, that's your next step today. Finally, number two, if you're not in a tough assignment right now, is it possible that God today is asking you whether you're available for a tough assignment? Whether you're willing to do whatever he might be calling you to do in the future that you don't even know about. An assignment that might be tough. If you are, then even if you don't know what that tough assignment might be that God has for you, I want to encourage you to consider writing down today's date on this piece of clay as a way of saying, Lord, starting today, January 24th, 2021, I'm available for a tough assignment. If you have one for me, I'm willing to do whatever you ask of me because I know that you will be faithful to help me do it. I know that you will be faithful to shape me through it, and I know that you will be faithful to show me anew how your power is made perfect through my weakness. Maybe that's your next step this morning. To write down today's date, January 24th, 2021, as this way of saying, Lord, I'm available for a tough assignment if you have one for me. Worship team is going to come back and lead us in singing Great is Thy Faithfulness as we do this exercise. And I would just encourage, if you want to stand and sing, to do so, but to feel free to stay seated and do this exercise right where you are right now if you know what God is calling you to write on that piece of clay. And then after the song, I'm going to come back up and close out our service and close out this series. Let me pray for us, though, as we conclude with song. Father, thank you again for your faithfulness. Lord, even as we declare your faithfulness in song, I pray that by your Spirit you would speak to hearts, that you would move us to write down, declare the tough assignment that we're in where we need your help and where you want to show yourself to be strong and sufficient. And then, Lord, you know there are others of us in this room for whom you've got a tough assignment. And we might not even know it yet, but we want to be willing, open hands, to receive whatever assignment you have for us, because we know that you'll be faithful to not only carry us through it, but you'll be faithful to reveal yourself to us as strong and sufficient, so that others in South Bend, in Nepal, or anywhere in between might come to know you as the faithful one. So minister to your people, Lord, even in this moment, in Jesus' name. And everyone agreed and said, amen. Let's sing.
Stand.